This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Port Orford City Planning Commission to order. It's 5:34, June 10th, 2025. Let's call the roll. Commissioner Gomes is actually on vacation, so she's been excused. Commissioner Lawton.
Here.
Commissioner Boyston.
Present.
Commissioner Truini.
Present.
And Commissioner Thielen is present also. Chair comments. I don't think I have comments. Public comments. Are there any public comments on agenda items?
No public.
I'm seeing no comment and no one raising their hand.
Okay, we've received two public comments in the mail, and they're short. I'm just going to go ahead and read them. One is from Penny Cease, 834 Deedy Street, Port Orford. Commissioners, ERPD is again before you for the 8th time with an application for yet another extension of their pipeline conditional use permits. What is the justification for this renewal? Again, as many times in the past, only vague claims are made with nothing to back them up. They say they have an active application with the Department of Environmental Quality. No evidence of this has been submitted, such as a communication with the department official overseeing their long-stalled recycled water use plan. Is it truly still active? DEQ has scheduled no hearing on the matter. They say they're waiting for the city of Port Orford to take action on their draft memorandum understanding for use in the city's recycled water. Where are the documents or statements from city to confirm that an MOU is being negotiated or even entertained? None have been presented. ERPD must not be allowed to continue to string Port Orford along with unsubstantiated promises of progress. Again, they lay the blame elsewhere. In the past, it has been the DEQ's requirements that have held things up. Now it is Port Orford's fault. Obviously, there is something seriously amiss with this golf course project and its supporting pipeline, or more information would have been provided. It's time for the city to acknowledge that fact and to step back from any involvement. Therefore, the Planning Commission must deny this 2025 request for an extension of ERPD's conditional use permits. And there's another one from Cameron La Follette. P.O. Box 857, Astoria. Dear members of the Planning Commission, Elk River Property Development, ERPD, is before you now for the 8th time seeking an extension request on their unbuilt and long moribund golf course project. Oregon Coast Alliance, ORCA, an Oregon nonprofit whose mission is protection of coastal natural resources and community livability, wholly agrees with the city planner that the burden of proof in favor of an extension is on the applicant according to city ordinance, and that the applicant has not met that burden of proof, neither under the comprehensive plan nor the ordinances, or even the conditions of approval in the permits themselves. The city of Port Orford has legitimately asked the applicant for various proofs and explanations of the inevitable and major costs the city will be forced to bear. There's no indication that negotiations are underway in any way significant enough to merit another time extension. As for the DEQ wastewater reuse application, that has been moribund for years as the applicants have not provided the information DEQ requires to complete the permit. ORCA urges the Planning Commission to deny the extension request. 8 years is more than long enough for a project to prove that it is active, financially robust, and has a high probability of success. On all these measures, the applicant has failed. Please add this testimony to the record. So those are the comments we've had. and they were on the agenda item. So item 4 on the agenda is Elk River Property Development, CUP 1602 and 1603 extension request. So if the applicant want to come up?
Have not had time to complete the minutes from last month, answering Commissioner Lawton's question.
Thanks.
State your name and where you live, and
Good evening. My name is Troy Russell. I'm here representing Elk River Property Development, and I'm a resident of Bandon. Here to make the simple request of an extension. We do have an active application with the DEQ, but the DEQ isn't going to process anything until we have a source of effluent water. It's the city's effluent, not ours. So our application won't be considered by them until we have a water source. And the city is, although they agreed clear back in 2016 and then 2018 to provide us the water, it's never been reduced to writing, a signed agreement. I've been going to city council meetings every few months for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. And last fall it was, we're not going to do anything and we're not going to move on this until the election. And then after the election is until a new council is seated. So in February, with the new council, it was an old presentation, but I gave the new council members kind of some history and brought it up to speed of what it is. And the council made it clear that they're waiting for a feasibility study with the city engineers, Civil West, to make sure, and that's the right course, I think. They need to make sure that the plant can supply the water and it's at a level, treated at a level that is eligible for the DEQ to consider sending it out for land application. Right now, the only thing the city can do is dump it in the ocean. There may come a time when they'll want another spot, and we've raised our hand, we'd like that water. The Civil West feasibility study was to be completed at the end of May. Now I'm told that that's going to be the end of August. And the city council has made it clear that they're not going to consider any negotiations over a memorandum of understanding until they get that feasibility study. And the DEQ is not going to move forward with any application unless and until that agreement is negotiated. So here we are with this chicken and egg. We are indeed waiting on the city, and the DEQ is waiting for us to have a source of water, and then we'll move forward. And that's where we are. Any questions? I have a question. Yes, sir. What if the feasibility study comes in and says it's going to be so expensive you can't afford to run a pipeline out there? Or is it the city's responsibility to run the pipeline? I'm kind of new. I'm new at the council and I haven't been involved in any of these things. So I'm just asking. We've said from the beginning that we will pay for the pipeline and hold the city harmless.
Are you talking about the city is conducting a feasibility study, or you are?
The city's engineering firm, Civil West,
Yes.
is conducting, they're using some of the monies. There was
750,000, I think.
from the lottery funds,
Mhm.
a grant, and they didn't start down this road. And again, it's the right thing to do. This is the correct track for the city to perform a feasibility study, because the more recent study about the state of the wastewater treatment plant, I think dates back to 2016, and time marches on, and it wasn't in great shape then, and time has happened since then. So some of those funds could be spent on this feasibility study, and it's underway. I think they entered into that contractual agreement in March maybe, and started down this path of of making sure that the water was at, the plant was in a healthy enough condition and the water was at a high enough level of treatment that it could be land applied. And so
Do you know why this study has been delayed for 3 months?
it took some time for the funds to get freed up. And the city didn't want to, the council didn't want to start down that path and get the bills running before they knew if they had the money to pay for it.
Understand.
And they found out, I think not until April or May, that yes, indeed, those, some funds, a percentage of those funds of that grant could indeed be used for a feasibility study. When that's the starting point of the whole process.
Joseph, are you familiar with that? I mean, you're at the council as well.
Can you use your microphone so everybody can hear the question?
Sorry.
As far as the feasibility study, the only thing that I'm really aware in regards to it is that it was supposed to be being done in June. That was the last I've heard about it, really, though. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a time crunch right now, so I've had to be focused on some other more time-sensitive items. Namely, the budget has been, taking a good amount of time and covering during our period of short staffness. However, Crystal has raised her hand a couple times. I don't know if she has a comment specifically on this or if she just has a comment in general on the, the renewal.
Go ahead, Crystal, if you have a comment or a question.
Well, I just wondered if the staff report was supposed to be a rebuttal or if we were going to do that as a first item.
That's a good point.
I think maybe it just got in.
I think it should be, I think it should come first, probably.
Yeah.
Or, well, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it always does. That's how we start out an application.
Okay, let's do the staff report then. And if we'll just hold the questions until we get the content.
I'd like to go ahead and read it. They have it in their hands. Maybe just got it today or tonight.
Okay.
So this is to the Port Orford City Planning Commission and
Thank you.
Greg Thielen, Chair, from me, June 6th, 2025. And this is Elk River Development Request for Extension. The City of Port Orford has received a request for an extension to continue with efforts to complete construction and development as described in land use approvals, CUPs 1602 and 1603, initially approved in April of 2017. Port Orford Municipal Code, Chapter 1732, Conditional Uses, Section 1732060, time limit on a permit for conditional use states the following. Authorization of a conditional use shall be void after 1 year or such time, lesser time as the authorization may specify unless substantial construction has taken place. However, the Planning Commission may extend the authorization for an additional period not to exceed 1 year upon written application to the Planning Commission. 1 year extensions were granted from 2018 through 2024 to allow the applicants to complete local and state permitting. State permitting cannot be approved prior to the local jurisdiction's approval of the conditional use permit. State permitting processes are technical in nature and may be subject to public comment periods, public notice, specific engineering to resolve problems, and other items needing resolution. The Planning Commission has a duty to understand the reasoning behind any requested extension, and the applicant has the burden of proof for justifying the need for any extension. The applicant letter dated May 12, 2025, makes reference to an active application with Oregon DEQ, stating that they, and that's the applicants, are awaiting a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the City of Port Orford to move that application forward. No written information except this one line has been presented with this request. No example of ongoing communications or other items have been presented to the Planning Commission along with the request for this extension. No summarization or images of ongoing activity initiated by Elk River Development, LLC, have been presented. There are no copies of letters or proposals that have been presented to the Port Orford City Council that are now being shared with the Planning Commission. No dates with charting of formal communications where Elk River Property Development, LLC, has requested work sessions with the City Council have been included. There is no evidence that Elk River Development is meeting their burden of proof for justifying an extension. Section 1704-140, Burden of Proof and Criteria for Decision, provides guidance for the applicant in Article 2, Procedures for Land Use Actions. Here is the excerpt. Section 1704-140, Burden of Proof and Criteria for Decision. A. The burden of proof is upon the proponent. The more drastic the change or the greater the impact of the proposal in the area, the greater is the burden upon the proponent. B. The proposal must be supported by proof that conforms to the applicable elements of the comprehensive plan and to applicable provisions of this ordinance, especially the specific criteria set forth for the particular type of decision under consideration. C. The applicant and any opponent may submit to the hearings body a set of written findings or statements of factual information which are intended to demonstrate the request is in compliance or non-compliance with the required criteria. When the applicants submitted their application in 2017, they provided evidence that the city deemed necessary for approval of 2 conditional use permits. The Port Orford Zoning Code does not provide criteria for any extension in Chapter 17.32.060, time limit on a permit for conditional use. However, there were a number of conditions in the approval of the CUPs. The request for extension is not a public hearing, and it is not time for debate of the CUP that was granted. In the past years, the City Planning Commission has asked the applicants to show that there is a reason for asking for an extension and that there is ongoing activity that would justify the extension. The only justification or burden of proof for granting the extension is the following statement in the request from Elk River Property Development, LLC. EPRD has an active application with Oregon DEQ and is awaiting a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the City of Port Orford to move that application forward. The Planning Commission is being asked to determine whether this 8th extension is justified, but there is little explanation or evidence presented to explain the delays. While the City Code lacks specific criteria, the applicants have not provided any reasoning that explains how they have proceeded to bring the City of Port Orford to the table to review and respond to a draft MOU. If the applicant has made an effort to do this, there is no information that shows how or when. The Planning Commission has the responsibility to understand why extension requests are now in their 8th year and how progress is being made. Without such information explained in the written presentation, the Planning Commission may deny the extension or explain why they believe that another extension is justified and grant the extension. The letter from Troy Russell, which he already spoke of, is attached. So basically, my concern is that when people come and ask the Planning Commission for things that are an application or extensions, there should be information in writing. I mean, we don't have anything to put in the files for justification. We have somebody's word, which is not what I would consider for the record. I mean, it's okay to have a good word and that you're telling the truth, but we don't have any evidence to show how that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Was there a question that we were talking about? I'm sorry,
I might add that there's also, according to that 17 something 140. All the documents or evidence relied on by an applicant must be submitted to and available to the local government at least 20 days in advance in writing. And the staff report to be used at the hearing must be available at least 7 days in advance of the hearing. So that was another thing that we don't have. We didn't have this in writing in 20 days.
You didn't have the staff report in 7 days either.
This is not a public hearing.
Oh, that's for a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be for a
Thank you.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were here last year. I'm sure you remember.
Oh, yeah. And then this year's,
And years before too. This is the fourth year.
I wasn't here 2 years ago. I was north of Seattle.
So our code says that conditional uses shall be for 1 year. Shall be for 1 year. As you know, the Planning Commission has been reviewing other codes for the conditional use process, for the conditional use renewal process. And they all basically say the same thing. They all basically put a time limit on conditional uses. The Planning Commission has come up with a new set of rules that it'll be in front of the City Council at their next meeting that would limit the maximum renewal to 5 years, which is the longest of any that I've seen in any of the codes. We looked at a lot of codes. So it would be a two-year initial and then 3 one-year extensions. And in my mind, the reason it's done is because conditions change over time, no matter what happens. And so now 8 years has gone by, and I realize that some of the time you were not able to do work because there was some challenges. There were about 16 months out of that you were not able to legally get permits and so forth. But there has been a substantial amount of time, and I just wonder. I just wonder if it seems like nothing. It seems like things are kind of coming to head after several years, and if the ERPD had been working diligently, this could have all been done by now. And so I wonder just so were you involved in this project from the very beginning?
Yes.
You were, okay. So you've been,
There was a period of time where I was working out of state, north of Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, but you were involved. So, so you've seen this all unfold. And let me ask you, if the city could magically hand you this MOU with so many gallons of Class C water right now, what would be your process to getting substantial construction, and what would be the timelines?
Our engineering firm, the Dyer Partners, which used to be the engineering firm of record for the city of Port Orford, and did the last survey of back in 2016. And they have the system partially designed. They just need to finish that design, put modern numbers on it, and submit it, and then go through the DEQ process. And then they review it, goes out for public comment, 2 periods of public comment. They check the engineering, it goes through the public comment, and then you have to respond to any concerns from anybody. But it's a science-based process with the DEQ. You're applying treated effluent on the land. Land applied instead of dumping it in the ocean. Lots of cities do it. Lots of golf courses in the Southwest do it, or in the southern tier. In Oregon, there's a handful of them. The closest one is Cottage Grove, but even the city of Drain, land applies their effluent on a pasture just before you get to Drain. So to answer your question is, we would go immediately to our engineer and say, because it's spending money, but we haven't had that engineering done because we don't know if there's a source of water, and it would be spending 6 figures for something that may not exist. But if magically the MOU appeared, we would start that process, and we would be in construction probably by, if everything went swimmingly, next spring.
So you think you could get the engineering?
The engineering is nearly complete.
And-
When we left off back in 2017 or 2018, it's just been sitting there.
And 2 DEQ permits with periods and public comment?
That's I'm told, about a 90-day process.
And how about ODOT? Are you going to be involved with ODOT?
Yeah, they're involved, and they had signed off once upon a time, but it's been a minute. There's a whole bunch of state agencies that weigh in. It's a laundry list of initials.
So just
Oregon Health is involved too, because the water is out where people would be playing. I mean, so there's some exposure, minor, but so there's a lot of state agencies that weigh in.
so ODOT, Health Department, other permits, what else would you need before you start construction?
Just 2 permits from the DEQ, one to take the water and one to use the water. The other agencies weigh in on throughout the process. Oregon Health Association, ODOT, DSL, Division of State Lands.
So an unknown period of time forward. I mean, you say next.
Between 6 and 12 months was the timeline that used to exist. And I've been wrong before, and some rules have changed, but that's what our engineer told us a few months ago.
So are those,
It presented it in a similar manner that you just did. If this happened, if suddenly you had an MOU from the city of Port Orford that they will supply the water, and that starts the process, how long would it take? And it was between 6 and 12 months.
so is this the mindset you had 8 years ago when you started off, that it would just be like next spring?
It was, but frankly, 8 years ago, we didn't have the money. So
Okay, so what I suggest is that enough time has gone by that the conditions that you're working under are no longer what the conditions were 8 years ago. And if you were to apply for a new conditional use permit, you could be current with what the conditions are now, and you could move forward and have it done in probably a similar amount of time. Because
it's going through the process again is quite painful, and we'll have to retrace those steps anyway with an extension, and it would be faster, much faster, to just be granted an extension and move forward. To have to go through the conditional use permit process again is a fairly large step back, and a fairly big burden financially to have to go through pay attorneys, pay engineers
But we're talking about,
for work they've already done.
but we're talking about a multi-million-dollar project. We're not talking about some, and this is a big deal, right?
It is. And
So the money is not, I mean, my concern is, as I said, and the reason we came up with a limit on the time for a conditional use, conditions change. And so that's,
I don't disagree,
Yeah.
but those haven't been adopted yet.
No, I know.
I'm asking for an extension, waiting, and Melissa Radcliffe told me that we talked frequently. Last week it was mostly about baseball, but it was about this feasibility study. It's June now. Are you expecting that? And she says, well, no, it's going to be, because they had to wait for the money from the grant. That May deadline and a report for June got pushed to the end of August and a report in September. That's what Melissa told me last Thursday.
so to reiterate what's in the staff report is that we need documentation on stuff.
And in the last year, I've been on record at city council meetings. I didn't provide it here, but I've been presenting to the city council. That's on record. You're right, I didn't document it and submit that. I certainly can. The conditions haven't changed in the last year. We're still waiting.
Did you have a question?
Yes. The other permits that you've had to get from the state, are they still in force? Will you have to go back and also
They're
get new
vested.
permits?
They're vested. The conditional use permit to build the golf course it's good.
So there's no time expiration date on those permits?
No, they're vested.
Okay.
We'll have to get a permit, an NPDES, National Pollution Discharge. It's a permit to do grading.
So you still have that permit to get?
And that's not a difficult permit to get. It's just requires engineering. You're going to move earth, and you have to protect the.
Well, I understand. My question was, is that yet another permit that you have to get? You haven't got that permit yet, is that correct?
You can't get that permit until when you're ready to build.
When you're ready to build. Well, are you ready to build? You don't have your engineering plans complete? You don't have your architectural plans complete?
They're being updated right now, yes.
So they aren't done, so you will need time to complete that. Then you will need time to submit for this other national permit.
That permit doesn't take a great deal of time.
What's a great deal of time?
It's 60 to 90 days.
But it's still another process that you have to go through.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's not an arduous task. It's engineers submitting a plan and the state reviewing it and a comment period.
Is there work going on out there now?
We've been clearing since September of 2023 and replanting grass as we go because we're changing the use from forest to farm.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about, you got your fairways sort of getting laid out yet, or is any of that stuff going on?
They're marked with T-posts pounded in the ground and a 2-inch 10-foot tall piece of PVC so you can walk the routing. But other than clearing and then smoothing it out to replant it,
so what
no earthworks are taking place other than smoothing off after we clear it.
Right.
To smooth enough to plant grass.
Just grubbing it out.
Correct, and planting in pasture grass.
So what happens if your engineer comes and says, this is not going to work? Trying to get this water from the sewage treatment plant to It's just not feasible. What
Our,
happens?
our water supply is a three-legged stool, three sources: winter water out of the Elk River, groundwater, and treated effluent water.
So you're
This
able
was
to-
this was never to, the reusing the effluent, it was never the major source. It's a secondary outfall for the city of Port Orford. At some point in the future, the DEQ may say to the city that you need another place to put your water. And Knapp Ranch was considered for that site when the city's system failed back in 97, 98.
Mhm.
But it was considered too expensive
Mhm.
to pipe it out there. So they ended up taking out, instead of, it used to be in Garrison Lake, and then it was in the foredune in between Garrison Lake and the ocean,
about that.
and now it's in the ocean, and
Yeah.
you're paying for both those systems.
Interesting.
This might be a naive question, but I'm new to the commission. So when you're talking with the DEQ, is it just a verbal exchange that's going on, or is there some written documentation that is being exchanged between your group and DEQ that could be provided to show that there is this chicken or egg situation going on?
It's primarily verbal, and
Would it
that's
be
from
pos-
Renee Numura. That was her recommendation.
Is it something that you could potentially get in writing from them that could be provided as some kind of documentation to show that this is actually a discussion that's going on that could be part of our record, so to speak, or
Well, there
more than
hasn't
just
been,
verbal?
there hasn't been any discussion for some time with the DEQ because there's nothing to talk about. We don't have a source of water to approach them for. So it's a back and forth is pointless. It would be a waste of their time.
It seems to me it would be evidence that you have been interacting with them, DEQ, that there is a written back and forth that's testimony to what you're telling us. So that would have been something to present.
Sure, but there's nothing to say. Last year, Renee submitted that, yes, their permit is active. I can resubmit that. It was submitted a year ago.
Is it something you could ask them to provide, saying you're in this quandary where you have you're asking
Yeah,
an extension
I
and
can email, the person I deal with is Renee Numura. She works out of Salem, and I can ask her to type a simple letter and send it that, yes, it's active. We're waiting.
that might be something that we could put into our files
Sure.
as part of,
I'll
the ongoing
pursue that.
process and as far as documentation.
I'll ask for one
goes.
from the DEQ.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's the kind of thing we asked you for last year, too.
Well, and with the city council, I mean, it was provided last year. A letter from, or a paragraph, an email from Renee Nomura that, yes, it's an active permit and we're waiting. We're still waiting. And the permit is, I'll ask her to send that same, or a new email saying, with this year's date on it, saying essentially the same thing.
Okay, so last year something was presented to the city council, is what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And now that you have an engineer involved, is there any kind of written back and forth that paper trail there that could be submitted as well?
Emails, yeah, they're waiting as well.
Because I'm sure you've signed a contract with them to do, or the city has signed a contract to engineer the whole pipeline.
No, there's no contract between the city and
So it's,
our engineer. It would have to be with their engineer, Civil
Okay.
West.
all right,
And Civil West would oversee our engineer's design,
I see.
the Dyer Partnership,
Mhm.
both firms out of Coos Bay.
But your engineer is working on this to the point where they're telling you they'll have something done by August.
They're not actively working on it until we get a memorandum of understanding.
Huh.
There's no water to move the project forward to this part of the project, the effluent reuse. That water doesn't exist from the city, and that's what we're waiting for, to move forward with the engineer or spending any money on. It would be kind of senseless to have the engineers working on something that may not ever happen.
It is a catch-22, isn't it?
It's frustrating.
Okay, so another question. So you said it was a three-legged stool, and I was just wondering, so there, I thought I understood you to say that the effluent water would be supplemental to the existing water that you may get from the wells at the Elk River?
Winter water out of the Elk River, yes.
And so that wouldn't be enough water for your engineers to proceed, is what I'm understanding? Is that, but because you want to make sure you have this backup source. I'm just, for my own education, asking this question. You need to have this backup source as the city effluent before you're going to be fully committed to being able to move forward?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Well, because it has everything to do with how big your reservoir is.
Understood. So in other words,
If it's 2 acres or 8 acres, if it holds 5 million gallons or 100 million gallons, an acre foot of water is 325,680 feet. And so kind of easy math is 3 acre feet is 1 million gallons. And typically on a golf course, you use an acre foot of water per acre per year. So if it's 90 acres of turf, you'd use 30 million gallons of water.
Well, just to add a little humor, in the wintertime, you could send the water back.
Well, if it's got effluent water in it, that water's not going anywhere because it would be tarnished.
is there any potential for water storage that you would be getting from the elk during the winter? Is that what you're saying, that there would be a storage pond that you could
A
put?
reservoir that we
reservoir that you could
would
put
pump into.
And that would did you say how much that was going to hold? How much water that would hold?
Well, it depends on the other water sources. If winter water is your only water source, then it's a pretty large pond, 7 or 8 acres and deep, to hold essentially a season's worth of water.
Oh, I see. Okay. So in other words, you're not going to construct the pond until you know how much water you're getting, because the pond would be determinant upon how much water you could actually store.
Yeah, and then obviously you'd want to build a smaller pond if you could.
Right. Okay. Understood. Okay. Thank you.
You would build a 3 acre pond if that would do,
Mhm.
but it depends on what your water sources are, and you balance it and
Okay.
try to be thrifty with your construction dollars.
Now, DEQ is waiting to see if we're going to provide water, correct?
Correct.
But aren't they also wanting to assess that pond and its environmental impacts?
That is
And-
correct.
Okay, so that's jointly, but if the city does not provide you with water, then you're going to have to build a bigger pond, is that correct?
And the DEQ will have nothing to do with the pond if there's no effluent water in it.
So,
It would fall to the Division of State Lands.
I'm sorry, what?
The DEQ has no concern with the reservoir if we're not reusing effluent. If it's just winter water out of the Elk or groundwater, it has nothing to do with the DEQ. It would be the division.
So their permit would not be necessary if it's just the reservoir out of the Elk River?
They weigh in on the reservoir if we're going to be pumping effluent water into it, as would the Oregon Health Authority. But if there's no effluent water, those two agencies would have nothing to do with the pond.
So they have no interest in the water you draw out of the Elk River?
No.
What
Not the
entity?
DEQ.
What
The
entity?
Division of State Lands does, yes, and ODF&W.
And so have you received those permits as yet? or their approval as yet?
No, but that would be pursued once we know how many legs
So
are
that's
on the
yet
stool.
another permit that you have not got, because earlier it seemed like you had everything together, but that one, you would need whether or not we
That-
provide
that
water
is-
or whether you have to get it directly from the river, is that correct?
That is not a difficult permit. It just takes some time and engineers.
Okay.
It's on record of what day, you can only take winter water when it's a certain level above what's reserved for fish habitat.
Right.
And that's November to March-ish.
Would they have to do some kind of study, or would you have to provide some kind of study based on drawing that water out of the river?
They study it all the time. They're monitoring it on a nearly daily basis.
No,
That's-
monitoring it for your property, whatever you take out of the Elk River. Do they monitor, or will they be doing a study with regard to that?
They tell you when you can take water. It's when exceeds a certain cubic feet per second flow in the river itself.
Once the stream flow hits a certain level, then you're allowed to take a certain amount of water.
Right, and it'll be monitored. It'll be part of the permit. It's not.
I think this part of the questioning doesn't have to do with the pipeline. So I'd like to stick with the pipeline.
My point here with these questions is we're not the only ones that are holding this up. I wanted to find a little more information about what other entities are involved in this and what the process is for getting that approval from those agencies, length of time and so forth, which again prolongs the whole development, correct? So
When you apply for one permit with one agency, they all get informed. So they all come along together because they have to tick the box on not each, but the one that applies to them. So they're all interconnected.
and they each have their own timeline, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No.
Mayor? May I ask a question?
Crystal, yes, please.
Is there a draft MOU that, I know that once you're in negotiations, that wouldn't probably be available to us, but is there a draft MOU that your attorney has written that was submitted to the city of Port Orford sometime in these 8 years that you could share with us that was not accepted?
Yes, one was submitted to the city year and a half ago. And it was boilerplate. There was actually, the engineer also represents, the Dyer Partners also represent the city of Sutherland, and our engineer, Aaron Speakman, cut and pasted. It's a sort of a primitive document, and that was submitted, and it didn't go over well because it's not specific, but we're not ready to talk specifics yet anyway until this feasibility study. So yes, one does exist. City has possession of it. It's on public record.
Thank you.
That was December of 2023, I think.
I've just been getting more and more curious of why I guess the reason I asked that is, like, you have to come to the planning commission first, And we've never been able to get anything in writing except some real basic things that, basically say, yeah, we're working on it, or we're trying to get a DEQ permit, or we're trying to do this. And normally projects have a timeline. They have a chart that shows what has to be done. And when those things are done, something can be checked off. And I'm very surprised that we haven't ever been able to find out anything like that, because that's exactly what we have asked for every year until this year. I just let you guys do your own thing without calling you up to ask if you were going to provide something, because in past years I have always, or usually anyway, done that, and nothing has been forthcoming except talk. That kind of doesn't feel very solid to me, because not because you're not telling the truth or something, but talk is pretty easy. It's not something that you can document and see and look at again. So that's why I'm asking. I just wondered why we don't have some kind of a chart that shows what's happening and what's expected and who's involved. And I can't believe that we don't have that. I mean, that would be the first thing in project planning from my experience. I guess that's a question. Do you have such a thing?
Yes, but it's not very current, but I do have a meeting scheduled with our engineers, a lunchtime meeting with our team and their team, on the 16th. And it could be, such a thing could be updated and put on a current calendar.
Isn't that something that you possibly could have done over these years to show us that, and then show where things are going to have to be updated or something, so that we don't feel like such idiots?
We've, at the advice of council, we didn't do that because we're waiting on if there's a water source or not. If there's no water source, then what's the point of spending the money with the engineers to come up with a schedule that has for a process that might not happen? The pipeline, not the golf course, is well on its way.
Well, I always look at projects, and this will be the last thing I say, but I always look at projects differently. It's like, if you don't have an actual goal with tasks, how do you ever know when you're going to get there?
We have those documents. We just haven't shared them on the advice of council.
You haven't shared them on the advice of council?
You mean your legal counsel, possibly?
Yes. Legal counsel.
Yes.
That you start down the road of planning documents and internal project documents, then the request might be more, and we weren't ready to share those timelines regarding the golf course. This is about a pipeline only.
It's about a pipeline.
Pump station and pipeline. And I could provide you that part. But it needs to be updated, and I'll ask our engineers to update it. I meet with them on the 16th, but this extension sunsets on that day, on the 16th.
Thank you, Crystal.
So if you decide, okay, we'll give you one more year, but condition it with, we want this.
We can't make more conditions. We have to open up the conditional use process in order to do that. I believe you could, but we cannot. So Crystal touched on the lack of documentation and the lack of, for lack of anything else, like treating the Planning Commission seriously as And so last year you mentioned that one of the reasons that you hadn't had substantial construction yet was that you had had financing problems. And you mentioned it again today. And I'm wondering, what did-
That's a past condition.
so when you got,
Years ago, we've been making progress like crazy the last 2 years.
so my question is, when you got your first extension and your second extension and your third extension, did you mention that? Or what did you tell the commission?
I didn't speak at the commission. Bill Close, the land use attorney, did.
And what did he say?
I wasn't here. I was out of state.
He didn't say, sorry, we don't have the financing.
I'd have to.
You don't know what he said.
I
I know,
don't know
you
what he
you just said that. Any more questions? Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Russell.
Thank you for your time.
So we are here to make a decision, and we are not allowed to make a decision whether we like the golf course or not, whether we like the pipeline or not, whether we want an outfall or not. This is strictly about the conditional use process, this conditional use permits that they got. It will have, our decision will be in the form of a motion. And the motion should be to approve it. And if it's not approved, if it goes down, it'll be denied. But it's nice to make a positive motion.
Can we still ask questions?
I'm sorry?
Can I still ask a question?
Of Mr. Russell?
No, of you.
Yes.
So what happens if we deny the conditional use permit
Then
extension?
if we deny the conditional use permit, the applicant has the option of appealing to the city council to overturn it, which is what they did last year.
I see.
So this body denied it last year.
Right.
And they appealed to the city council, and they overrode the planning commission,
Right.
basically. As I understand it, and I believe that it's been in the communication from the applicant, whatever the city decides it can be appealed to LUBA, but the city decides. The city makes the decision.
Gotcha.
I move that we deny the Elk River development request for extension.
Could you make that in a positive? Well, I just said,
I don't know how to put that in.
so what you would do is you would recommend that it be extended and then vote against it. But do you see it's creating a form?
Okay. Well, help me with the language on that then.
Well, you would say, I move we
Vote on
extend,
it?
we extend 1602 and 1603. Or to, what is it, renew it?
I believe either one would be appropriate. I would say move to grant the extension of conditional use permit 1602 and 1603.
That would be the motion.
Okay, that just seems, sorry, Greg, contrary to what I want to do. So does someone else want to try it?
Let's talk about this a little more. Can we talk about it some more?
We will talk before we vote too.
Okay. So I move that we vote on extending the conditional use permit.
1602 and 1603.
16 what?
Is there a second?
So we're just voting on it right now.
Yes.
Okay.
So we need a second.
I second it.
Okay, discussion.
So I guess I also have a question. What if the applicant puts up a bond for a period of time to provide evidence that they are working toward evidence that they're actually providing information that we've requested, because we haven't gotten any information for 8 years or whatever. And they say we can submit a bond, and if we don't get it to you by the 16th, then they lose the money. And I mean, I'm just throwing this out. I don't know if that's, Crystal could probably answer that, if that's even an option. I guess that would be something that the council would have to.
Council,
I would think that would be something that would be,
up to them.
council would do.
Yeah. I'm thinking that the council, this is kind of in their hands because according to Mr. Russell, it's their delays that have caused him to be delayed. So if that's the case, we haven't got any information to that extent in order to say, well, the council agrees with you on that, so we're good with it. They'll have to say that. They'll have to say, we delayed this, or so I don't feel like we can answer those questions. Only the council can.
I don't think that's something we can do. I think we're just here to vote yes or no.
Right.
I feel that they've had a chance to do this, and if they were getting a conditional use permit right now, I don't see anything standing in the way of them. But it's been 8 years, and it's going to be another, you can guarantee it's going to be another few years. And I mean, it could be 10, 12, 14 years. There's no way of knowing. And
Well, they're spending some money out there.
They can always
So-
reapply.
well, and as Mr. Russell said, they don't have to use this. This is not a, they can use the river water.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I would personally like to see any agreement that the city makes with ERPD to be in the conditional use permit.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand it, memorandums of agreement or memorandums of understanding are not legally enforceable even.
Right. They're saying we're going to
Yeah,
work on getting a contract.
I would like to see that in a real conditional use permit, so there's actually teeth.
Right.
I think I think they had a chance to do this, and they just didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair to the city and to be fair to the citizens, I think this needs to get opened up again. You know, I don't hear anybody speaking against an outfall, but
Mm-hmm.
any more discussion? Then let's take a vote. Commissioner Truini.
I would choose to deny the permit at this point until I feel like we receive more documentation to support why they need another extension.
So is a no?
Is a no, yeah?
Commissioner Boydston?
A reluctant no.
Commissioner Lawton?
No.
Commissioner Thielen is a no also. So, Crystal, there'll need to be some sort of memorandum or results of this to go to the applicant?
Yeah, I will be gone this next week, but I'd be happy to work with you or Joseph on the phone, or I could do it in a week and we do have 10 days, I think, to do a decision, and I can do it when I get home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. City planner comments?
No, thank you.
Planning commission comments? Thank you all for thinking this through. It's really difficult. Sometimes this is really difficult. Public considerations. Any public comments? So our future meeting is July 8th at 5:30. This meeting is adjourned.
Was there no planning clearances? Was there no planning clearances?
Oh, sorry, I didn't do planning clearances.
There have been no planning clearances approved since the last meeting.
Thank you.